Hey, Gator Nation. Welcome back to the Respect Our Decision podcast, guys. As always, I'm your host, Hirsch. With me, CJ the Man McCann,
What's up, guys?
the Hype Man West,
Was good, Gator Nation.
and joining us tonight, our very special guest, Mr. Zach Goodall.
How's it going, everybody? Glad to be here.
Zach, of course, is a writer for SI All Gators, covers the Gators, in football and all kinds of aspects of Gator sports, and has been at some of the at the two recent spring practices. So we're going to get a little information about that and just the tempo, a little bit of the temperature of the rest of the program right now as things stand. Just shoot it around for a little bit and see how things are going. But as always, guys, go out there and make sure you download this podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you're checking us out on YouTube and you haven't done already, do us a huge favor, man. Hit that subscribe button. It's free. Doesn't cost you a dime. Drop a like on the video if you like this content and leave us a comment down below of what you've seen in spring practice from the little bit that's already out there that you really like, whether it be some of the throws DJ's making, maybe how Zach looks, maybe it's hey, I really like what I'm seeing from the speed in the wide receiver room. Obviously there's not a lot out there right now, but we get hyped about the little things. That's what we do. So guys, we're gonna jump right into it, man. I'm not even gonna beat around the bush. We're gonna jump right to it because it's everyone's question. Zach, what does DJ Lagway look like in person in Gator helmet and kind of pads?
I think he looks a lot like everything he's made out to be. Coming out of high school, obviously everyone loved his production, loved his athleticism, but a huge aspect of his evaluation was physically looked like a college quarterback already, really as a junior even in high school. Yeah. And he's arrived at UF at, I believe, 6'3", 238. I saw a picture of him back near the end of the recruiting cycle where he was standing next to Billy Napier, who is advertised as 6'3", and he made DJ look like he's 6'4". So makes you wonder if he's even bigger than they're letting known. But he absolutely looks the part. Again, like you said, these practices are limited. Our media window is like 15, 18 minutes during individual drills, a lot of throwing on air. But at the same time, in those periods, you do get to see at least, again, those physical, athletic intangibles that players like DJ Lagway bring. And you see the big arm. You see his release. It reminds you a bit of a baseball player because he's played a lot of baseball in his life. I'm sure there are going to be technical things people will pick up on in these clips that come out along the way. But then you remember, like, the first day we were out there and everyone was going absolutely crazy over the Lagway videos. That was his first college practice. His first practice with like 6 offensive coordinators in total on this Florida staff, 3 analysts, 2 co-offensive coordinators, and Billy Napier. There's going to be a lot of work left to be done. He'll tell you that. Billy Napier will tell you that. But you can certainly see exactly why Florida has such high hopes for him, because he does bring a little bit of a different juice, just in terms of again, like the physical aspect of his game that he brings to the quarterback room. It's something that Florida, I mean, Anthony Richardson obviously was very special, but besides him, how far back can you go to say that you've had such a fantastic athlete like Lagway? I mean, you'd have to probably go back to Tim Tebow.
Speaking of Tebow, and I wanted to follow up with what you were talking about his release. Do you think, just from the little you've seen, that's something they're going to have to work with him on at the college level to kind of improve it? Kind of, because he's got that low kind of snap sometimes to it. He changes it a lot depending on the situation he's throwing into. I've noticed that from his high school highlights. But do you think that's something they're going to have to work with? I mean, obviously, we've seen Tim Tebow be very successful at the college level with a funky release, but college has changed. The defenses have changed since then too.
Sure, and I'm sure there's going to be some technical stuff in general they'll want to brush up. I think footwork might even be the most important part, just with the systems that come with college footwork and clean, polished, and fast footwork. It's so critical. But you mentioned it too. On his high school film, you could see that the adjustment of arm angles, and I don't think that's necessarily an accident. I think that is actually a product of just how talented DJ is. I think he knows these different angles that he can use effectively to make different kinds of throws. So there will be some cleaning up to it, but you also got to wonder how much is Florida going to want to lean in on those angles, on what he is already able to do with his arm. Will they want to take away from some of the just natural ability, the natural spin he can put on those balls? It'll be fascinating to watch. There'll definitely be some tuning up required, but to what extent, I'm not exactly sure.
Guys, anything you want to ask on this particular subject before we move on and let the DJ talk kind of live for the rest of the episode?
Nah, I don't have any question about DJ. I was gonna flip it to the other guy.
Just I don't know. What do you think personally as far as what you've seen from him? How soon do you think he's ready as opposed to other college freshman quarterbacks that you've seen come into play? How is he further along, or is he right kind of where you expect him to be as a college quarterback as a freshman right now?
It's a great question, because I think that they're going to be the freshman flaws for sure. But when you think about that physical build, the athleticism, the ability to change arm angles, and these were some things that, granted, it's it's a non-padded throwing camp at Elite 11, but they're really testing the more advanced aspects of quarterback play that quarterbacks can do in these camps. And there were some ups and downs, but you also saw a lot of flashes that would suggest he could probably play earlier rather than later when it comes to developing as a passer. So with that in mind, I would think he can play meaningfully as a freshman. I don't know how wet they're going to want to get his feet when it comes to the full passing playbook, but I would think at a minimum, just with the removal of the quarterback rushing game last year compared to 2022 with Anthony Richardson, uh, I think it would be really beneficial to get him on the field this year to change some things up, offer a different spark to the rushing game. It's something Billy Napier's done back to his time at Louisiana too with Levi Lewis. So I absolutely see a path toward him playing meaningfully this year. I think even at the Under Armour All-American game, he had mentioned that the staff has talked to him about potentially playing in every game. So I bet on it for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say I could very much see him having that Tebow-esque role early, where you bring him in on a 3rd-2 or second and short package, because he has that threat, not obviously to run at his size, but he can also uncork the ball. If you want to catch somebody, with their feet in the dirt, he can throw one. He can already throw one 60, 70 yards with a flick of a wrist. So he's got that threat where you have to respect it enough where, he could be quite the weapon in those short yardage situations early as he gets more experience. And then you can kind of expand his package a little bit more. Pause. So
Yeah, you don't even have to go back that far. You can go back to what Emory Jones did with Kyle Trask, where he would come in and kind of mix it up as a freshman.
Never heard of him.
but Emory did a lot of that, and then Dan threw that wrench in the a wrench out there when he threw the ball deep against Georgia, something that Georgia hadn't seen him through because he was running a whole lot before that. So yeah, I agree with you both. Yeah, I could see that happening as well.
I don't put as much stock into the Emory situation just because Emory didn't have the physical build that DJ has. But I understand what you're saying about situationally, but DJ has that. If you need a 3rd and 2, he can run and probably push the pile and run over somebody if need be. I mean, you don't necessarily want to put him in that situation early, but the threat is there. All right, guys, let's move on. That's, there's going to be a lot more hype about DJ Lagway, but we got to remember it's still Graham Mertz's team, and that's a good problem to have going into the season. Wes, anything you want to ask Zach about what he's seen so far? I know, and I want to pre-word this. I know that day 1, y'all focused a lot on the offense, and then day 2, I believe you said you watched the lines of scrimmage a little bit more in your reports. So,
yeah. First off, thank you, Zach. I know you were on Paul Feinbaum's show last week, and now you up, with the big leagues here with Respect Our Decision.
Oh my
so I appreciate you, though, man. Yeah,
you don't call him the hype man for nothing. He hypes everything.
But to Hirsch's point, I read your stories last week. You were talking about, let's go to the other 5-star on the opposite side of the football in McCrae. Give us your thoughts and what you've seen from him as far as like we all know fans is not a lot that they can see. So just your early thoughts on McCrae. Does he look just the same thing we asked about DJ as far as this hyped up 5-star guy, the number one edge player? What do you think about him?
Yeah, unfortunately, in the trenches specifically, that's where these practices do seem to be a huge waste. You-
Yeah.
because I want to see them doing one-on-ones at a minimum,
Not just
So
hitting
like
the
what
sled over and over and over again.
yeah, but you do see again they put so much into the height, weight, length, athleticism profiles of these guys. They're not necessarily looking for tweeners, projects like LJ McCrae. There's been some conflicting reports about his height and weight and size overall, but generally speaking, big guy. I think I would
Yeah.
say he's safely 6'5", 6'5" and a
Wow.
half. I would say he's safely 260 plus pounds for an 18-year-old, and I think that he
Wow.
really fits what they're trying to do at that F defensive end position, the other edge rusher opposite of the weak side guy. And he packs a lot of punch. That was one drill I was watching the other day as they were going up against the pad around the goalpost, just working on all different kinds of strikes. And they had him rep out quite a few times. They wanted him to get, I'm sure, his exact, precise location of his punches down, reactions coming from different sides, treating it like it's a blocker, especially against the run, I would think. But you absolutely see the power that when he was in high school just dominated the blockers that were in front of him, the offensive linemen. He brings a lot of athleticism. I would love to see more of those kind of drills because we didn't really get to see that. But at a bare minimum, he's got the power down. And that's what I think really works for him on that strong side. On the weak
Yeah.
side, you really want to get that speed rusher. That's what Princely Uman was good at last year. I'm really curious to see what they do with that position this year. But he should be able to two gap, move a little inside, and really aid. I think specifically the run defense over time.
Wow. Love a defensive lineman with violent hands. So appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
CJ,
Let's talk about like the one of the later guys in the class. It's a lot of it been made of him, just through the pictures. Jaden Baugh is a guy that looks more ready to play running back than I think any of us expected him to be as a late addition. Have you seen anything from Jaden Baugh that really stands out to you as a guy that's like, wow, this guy could actually make some meaningful snaps in this offense this year?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how the running back breakdown goes because I mean, I remember first year when Napier came in, we were talking about the potential of 100 attempt rushers, and I think we even got close with Anthony, but Naquan was supposed to be a part of that. They go on the two back thing last year with ETN, and now is Jaden Baugh or Kanan Daniels or Trayon Webb going to take on all of ETN's touches? Will we get closer to 100 guys? I could see that because I think Daniels and Baugh are both capable of playing at this point for a lot of different reasons. Baugh is another huge one. I mean, he's like 6'1" to 30 something, and he moves crazy for someone like that, especially as a former receiver, I think linebacker, maybe safety. You could see the movement skills. With the drills we've been able to see, it's been a little bit more passing game for the running backs, but I was impressed with his ability to run routes out of the backfield. I would assume that comes from his time at receiver. He's definitely got good hands, but those are quite different routes, a lot of different timing, and he seemed to be picking up with really little to no hesitation. So he seems to be adjusting well, and I'm with you too. I mean, I think he's only got 1 year of running back in total, so I was kind of thinking Kanan Daniels with, I mean, how many rushing yards did he have in high school? Like 5,000. Like he
6,000.
seems
Yeah, he's got like
something crazy.
8,000 carries already.
He's
He
like
reminds
the
me a lot of
leading,
Kelvin Taylor, man, with the mileage that kid's
the
got on him.
greatest Mississippi running back of all time, yards wise or something. It was ridiculous. But it's good that you say that about Jaden Baugh because of the quarterback, running back pass game at the University of Florida for the last 2 seasons has been less than stellar as far as catching the ball out of the backfield as a running back. I would really like to see that improve. If Jaden Baugh can be the guy now to kind of take some more swing passes and do those things, especially with Graham Mertz's skill set the way it is with those short passes, quick release would be beneficial to him. That's definitely encouraging to hear just based on where we were throwing the pass in the backfield the last couple of seasons.
Zach, adding to the running back room, did you get to see Cam Carroll out there? Was Cam Carroll participating at all in any way, shape, or form?
He's wearing his helmet in a black limited
Non-contact
participation jersey,
Yeah.
non-contact. I feel like I've seen him running around a bit, so I would think he's progressing at a minimum. I don't know what they'll do with him in
I know there were a
spring.
lot of rumors that maybe his career might be over. That I know some people had put it out there that had knowledge of the team that he had, that they had said he had sustained some nerve damage, and there was a worry he may not play again. That was months ago. And then Cam himself came out and said, blessed, ready to have a chance to go again, all that. So, that's one of those I'm monitoring really closely because I was top of the Cam Carroll hype train right before he got hurt last fall. So even if the young man can come back and contribute in any way, shape, or form, I think it will be really big for that veteran presence, along with Trail, obviously, with those three young guys in the room. Speaking of young guys, how does from the little bit, obviously, you got to see, but there was a lot of throwing and catching. What wide receivers stuck out with it's going to be a lot of young guys playing ball this year. Obviously, outside of Trey, we know what Trey brings to the table.
Yeah, there's definitely been a leaning on young guys from what I can tell. And that mainly has to do, I think, with, and this is my fault, I still need to work on pronunciation. I've had 2 months here, but Shimray DK, I believe.
You got it. You nailed it. CJ knows. CJ researched that one when we got him through the portal. He was like, hey, guys, don't say it like it looks.
There's a lot of room for error. If you were to mess with that, I was like, I gotta look up some highlights.
Yeah. And CJ contacted me immediately. He goes, look, this is how this is pronounced.
him and Triquez Bridges both. I was like, hold on, we got to get these names right. I don't want to look like I'm disrespecting these guys for sure.
Obviously, Graham though has a great rapport already with that guy from playing at Wisconsin though.
Exactly. And I think that will help him because right now he's limited with an undisclosed injury. I've really not seen him doing much other than rehabilitative work, and he might have run a couple of routes with more like instructional, not necessarily like the routes on air, but working with Billy Gonzalez. But that's led to Aiden Mizell was someone that stood out to me immediately because he was one of the earlier guys getting reps, and I forget exactly what the height weight has changed to, but he's up a significant
he was up like 12
amount.
pounds on the chart on the official website, and I was going to ask, how does he look compared to last year? Okay, great.
He's not Andy Jean built because Andy came in looking like he was ready to go at his size.
He was
a little bit shorter,
last year.
But built guy. But that's not to take away from what Aiden has put on. I think he looks like someone that could step up and play at this point. And so far, I mean, this is without pads again, but it doesn't look like it's really impacted his speed. You can see a different kind of wiggle. He's got good footwork. You can see definitely a lot of game speed. I didn't really get to watch him do anything deep, but I watched him run a couple of intermediate routes, and you could see it there. He seems like a player that's ascending at this point.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna stick with the wide receivers and ask this quick question. A lot of questions have been asked. Who's going to step up with Trey? We all know Trey has solidified his position. I know it's March is before the spring game, but if you had to project, a lot of questions about the young guys with his Mizell coming back, Jackson, the Wisconsin transfer coming in. You have Abrams and I forgot the other freshman that's coming in. If you had to project who's going to go out there with Eugene week 1 and start right now, who would you say will be out there? If you don't mind, I know it's March, everybody, so don't hold into it.
No, I think that one is predictable because of experience. With Khalil Jackson starting, I think 9 games last year, I think he'll at least get a week 1 start. And as long as DK is healthy, then I would think probably would
take
too.
Ricky's spot.
Yeah, that, or if Wilson takes more slot snaps, I'm not sure. They'll split it up a good bit. But my breakout guy, and I guess I kind of viewed him as a potential breakout player as a freshman and was wrong. But Andy Jean, granted, he dealt with some injuries last year, but I thought he was the most polished wide receiver of the class coming out last year. Honestly, a bit more polished than Eugene at receiver. Probably wrong, but he was. I thought he was an exceptional route runner in high school. I thought he was a big play, yards after the catch threat, even if he wasn't necessarily the most athletic wide receiver
And
prospect
he
in his
was
class.
used
I think
really
he was.
weird in his high school. They threw a lot of screens to him in high school. He wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just broke away. And
Yeah.
he did a good job of getting away with it. So even where it didn't look like a big play, even if it was only a 10-yard gain, it was like a 12, 15-yard gain, really. I'm excited for him. If he's healthy, I think that he is someone that could actually step up and take one of the outside spots. I know he's not as big. That's where you probably have DK stay in or Khalil, one of those two, whoever they view as maybe the better X receiver. But you could probably have Eugene and Andy Gene kind of rotating in between inside and outside too. You could give them some different responsibilities, but I think they could complement each other well.
How fast is Drury Hawkins?
Fast. Guy's fast. I mean, like, I always struggle to believe these
Numbers you
coming
see,
out
yeah.
of. Yeah, but I mean, if Ohio State, which has no allegiance to Dre Hawkins, is going to come out here and write that he's got a 4.2540 at their camp, I'll believe something close to it. You can see the speed. I think that playing at IMG definitely helped him develop as a receiver too, even though the utilization wasn't super great there. But he undeniably got great coaching at the wide receiver position. But even if he's not necessarily to crack the rotation meaningfully this year, I think he should be considered a near lock to at least get some run in the return game, whether it's kick or punt return. Exactly. Probably punt return, just that's where Ricky Pearsall was last year. They could use the speed. To me, he seems like an obvious choice with that kind of game-changing athleticism.
I saw somebody the other day say something about that. Do you really want to see a freshman back there returning kicks? And I'm like, I have no problem with it as long as he proves he can hold on to the ball. I don't care. I don't care what he does. Or doesn't fair catch it inside the 10-yard line. You don't do those two things, and I have no problem with it. And you'll know that before you get to week one if the kid can catch the ball or not. That's
right. That's what Devontae Smith and Jalen Wallow did at Alabama. You put them out there freshmen, they can't get on the field. Yeah.
You find a way to use guys with those talents. I mean,
absolutely.
One more question about spring, and then we'll move into some other things. What is the? I know. Did y'all get to watch any of the offensive line work?
A little bit. They do a lot of like 2-man blocking combos.
I saw some of that with the George and Dickerson. I was going to say, did they ever line up like a 5-man line? And if they did, what did it look like? Not yet.
Not
okay.
Yet. I would think as of now it would look like from left to right: Barber, Harris, Slaughter, George, Dixon.
You don't think Dixon and okay, that was going to be my chief question. Did you think maybe Barber slides back to right and Dixon goes to left?
I could see it. I had only seen a couple of reps with it, and I believe most of them, if not all, Dixon was on the right. But it's so early too. I think
they'll play with it, I'm sure. And I know Barber played an extremely large amount of snaps hurt last year. I mean, real hurt, more hurt than most people know, and I still think he held his own more often than not. Obviously, the whole line was suspect, but I mean, and we can talk about that as we go further here. I really think that with more time to gel and more time with these guys, some of these younger guys like Slaughter, you mentioned Harris being on campus, and I know San Diego State's coaches raved about Dixon and how good he was. They said he was better than the young man that went to Ohio State the year before that we wanted as well. I think that offensive line should be a lot better this year, especially with George out of the tackle position. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, I'm not trying to put the young man down. I just feel like he played out of position last year. So I think that should greatly affect the offensive line this year. But let's quit talking about spring practice because, like you said, you've only seen so much. You're not going to know a whole lot. But let's last week, we did a schedule preview, our way too early schedule preview. And one of the things we talked about is this schedule, while obviously the back end is extremely difficult, and there's no questioning that, there's a lot of games to be had early in this schedule with with new quarterbacks in new places and coaching changes. Texas A&M, Mississippi State. What do you think realistically the Gators can do against this schedule next year? I mean, and being very realistic about it.
Yeah, I wish I could see more at spring camp to answer that fairly.
Oh, and I'm not saying based on what you've seen at spring.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, based
in
on what you.
general.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to see like my barometer. I really think, and this might be silly, but I feel like the spring game the past couple years has been a pretty good indicator of what was to come. Just generally speaking, when you go position by position, you get a
That's
good
fair.
feeling as to what we have. But I mean, based on the early aspects of this roster, they've gotten far more experienced, whether it's the young or the players they added through the portal or this reliance on a lot of second, some third year players that were recruited by Napier and have played quite a bit. Um, you have to think that the ceiling has been raised. And so with the early parts of the schedule, right, these games that you might consider coin flips, these home matchups, you would think that there's room for Florida to hold its own against these opponents, unlike it's done the past couple of years. But at the same time, the unknowns are similar on the other side. Like, yeah, Miami is coming here with a lot of change, but will Cam Ward be as advertised? Will some of their second year players make similar, if not bigger jumps? Because I think that it's not a carbon copy, but I think that there are some similarities in the reliance of the players they have recruited and deployed at a young age between these Florida and Miami rosters. So all of a sudden the coin flip can go back. UCF, maybe. I don't want to give that too much credit because that just seems so unlikely, but who knows? I don't know. I feel like I'm copping out, and Paul called me on the same thing last week, but I feel like I've just got so much more to see. Like I like the pieces. I like the potential. I'm truly quite a fan, and I've said this before, of the key players that Napier has recruited himself from the high school level and put on a fast track towards playing early. I've said this before, but Kelby Collins, I think, is one of my favorite players on this entire roster. I think Kelby Collins, now they're toying with him. I think he might play a little more defensive line than I had expected, but I was thinking he might come in as the starting jack this year. And I think that guy, if he were to do that, could be a fantastic replacement for Princely Umanmielen. And if you're seeing that across the board, if Kelby Collins comes to fruition at the edge position, at the jack position, if Andy Jean and or Aiden Mizell step up into those roles by Eugene Wilson, and you apply that across the board, like who am I to say at this point that it really is a coin flip with Miami at home? Like if all these things come to fruition, if they all come true, if they've hit on these evaluations like they seem to in the early parts of their careers, that shouldn't be a coin flip. That should be a predicted, even right now, a Florida win. So I'm fascinated. I feel like I truly could answer that question better in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, like we said, I mean, it's like we said in ours, it's way too early, but Billy has preached, we're still building, we're trying to get to where we have experience in the room, guys that have been in the program, guys that have been through, our system. We're here now. All those, all that goes out the window. So, we've got to see it now. And if Billy truly does have a plan in place, and I know a lot of people are tired of hearing that, I get it. You should see that come together. And like I said, a lot of those early games are at home with quarterbacks coming in that are new to their team. Cam Ward's never played in front of a crowd like he's going to week one in the swamp.
Facts.
So,
Right.
we've seen that affect better quarterbacks. So we'll have to see. Guys, any follow-ups to that?
Yeah, I want to ask about the switch more on the like you were talking about as far as the defense side of the ball. With the Roberts coming in, how do you feel like that? I mean, our defense doesn't have any other thing to. Isn't the bar of getting better is not set that high from what we came off from last year. How do you feel about that aspect and him coming in and being able to gel with Armstrong and a lot of the D line coach we switched out with the changes on defense? How do you feel? My guys, I know you talked about Collins, and if you on top of that, how do you feel about TJ Cersei as well? Because I like his effort. He's a guy that seems like he doesn't quit. You see him running downfield when you go back and rewatch games as far as making tackles downfield like a hustle player. So how do you feel about the defensive as in whole with the changes as far as the coaches and Cersei especially? Because I know you talked about Collins.
Yeah, I'll start with Searcy. I'm a big fan of his too. I think that last year he was the run defender to Collins being the pass rusher for the most part. And they both did several things well, but Searcy, especially for a bit of a slimmer, taller, athletic edge rusher, who I think is also another fit on the weak side, he really held his own. I thought he came in when he had opportunities to play against the run. There were some freshman moments, but he showed a lot of play strength, made a couple of stops, and really did well there. If Collins is to stay on the jack spot, I feel as though they could truly rotate. Maybe it's Searcy starting to get those rundowns with Collins coming in and being the pass rusher. I mean, Collins had, I think, 20 quarterback pressures last year on around like 200, maybe less pass rushing snaps. And to me, even though he only had 1 or 2 sacks, that forecasts a lot of sacks to come. That to me says as a sophomore, if he gets those kind of opportunities, those pressures should turn into sacks. So I really like that combo. I think that if you get them both onto the field in whether it's specified ways or even let them run on both ends of the defense, uh, that could really help. I think that would solidify these edges. Bigger picture with Ron Roberts, I'm really fascinated to see how he will impact the defense from a mentorship perspective. I don't think he's going to call plays. Billy Napier has said as much that Austin Armstrong will continue to do that. There's still been questions as to exactly what it is an executive head coach of the defense will do, but I think it's exactly that. They know that they've got a young coaching staff. They know that some of these guys might miss stuff. Austin Armstrong, who was and might still be, but I don't think is anymore the youngest defensive coordinator in college football. He's going to miss things. It just is what it is. So Ron Roberts coming in, while it leads to these questions, like if anyone knows this defense inside and out, it's him. He got him head coaching jobs, albeit at smaller levels a while ago. And he held on, he had 2 of them. He held on to them for some time. He's coordinated multiple Power 5 defenses. I think Auburn's defense got better last year. I think Baylor's defense did really well under him. Louisiana was impressed by what it had gotten out of him originally when Billy Napier was there. So I totally understand the value of bringing him in to let him offer guidance. I guess the only potential thing is let's imagine a scenario where things continue to go poorly. Um, does that lead to a power struggle? Does that lead to maybe we should be having someone else calling the plays here? And what kind of ripple effect would that have? I'm not sure. I don't want to theorize that because I don't want to imagine like a worst case scenario, but at least that is still something I think to at least think about.
CJ?
All right, yeah, let's I guess shift over. We saw a bit of the drills on there with the secondary coach Will Harris, Jason Marshall, a few of those guys doing tackle drills. And I know you probably haven't seen too much of the secondary as far as like one-on-ones and things like that. But could you talk a little bit about what you've seen from the secondary? Have you seen anything that stands out to you, either from like the young guys like Jameer Grimsley, maybe Jakeem Jackson, or maybe you've seen some improvements with Jason Marshall?
Yeah, most of their stuff has seemingly been tackling, some run fitting, not so much coverage drills, at least from what I've been able to watch. But uh, I'm sure you guys saw the clip that Cam Parker posted of Will Harris just getting decked, getting tackled in the tackling drill. I think that's really cool. I think that is something that's going to inspire the defensive backs here. Is they're going to want a coach that'll go to war for them, and in return, they'll go to war for their coach. And if he's willing to get tackled by guys wearing helmets, that says a lot to me. And I think you could see the energy of the players too in these drills. Like they might be timid at first, but I think they're not afraid to ultimately give him the business and go through these drills passionately. And that's been one of the bigger deals over the past couple of years is the physicality, not just from a tackling perspective, but they want to run a lot of press. They want to run a lot of man. and that requires getting hands-on, being not necessarily grabby to get penalties, but being physical at the line and slowing guys out of their releases. And they've really struggled with that. So as of now, at least, it seems as though they're buying into a bit more physicality, even if it is just in fun and games with their tackling their defensive backs coach. But I think that's encouraging, at least.
Wes, you got anything else you want to ask?
No, I'm good. He's answered a lot of my questions so far. I might think of something later, but yeah, he's hit the nail on the coffin with a lot of my questions as far as the defense and everything like that. So,
Let me shift gears. And we're talking about defense. Obviously, Russ Callaway recently named co-offensive coordinator. Do you think Russ Callaway calls plays this season? Do you think Russ calls the majority of the plays this season?
I was going to ask full time,
because I know he'll call some. I think I know he called some last year. I mean,
right.
not a lot, but he called some plays.
I think he did the scripted plays, the first 10.
I think he did more than that. I know he did versus Georgia. I know he called some plays against UGA, and that's here nor there. But let's go back to the original question.
I guess I want to know what that structure was. Like, was it truly random? Like, hey, this isn't working, Russ, can you help us against Georgia? Was it the plan to give him
I think
the
it was
first
planned. I think they had a plan that they had been working on. I think he's been slowly brought along based on some things I've been told. Now, you know how that goes. You can be told something by one person, and tomorrow somebody else will tell you, no, that ain't what happened.
But I guess what that makes me wonder is, what does that plan look like this year? Does he get all of the first half and Napier gets the second? Do they do that? And if it's going well, he continues into the second?
Exactly.
I'm curious because, like, if he has earned the right to call plays on the majority, or if not full time, I guess my question is, why wait? Why take the off season to determine that? Like, if he's earned that, just give it to him. And maybe it's an ego thing. Maybe it's we know Billy Napier loves to call plays. I think he wants to prove himself as a play caller. I don't necessarily want to say he's like holding on to the grudge of being fired from Clemson, but his entire career as a play caller, he's been questioned. So maybe there is a drive there from him that he's got something to prove with the returning starting quarterback. I don't know. I with you, and I definitely heard the same thing, that he called plays. He did against Georgia, and that there were other instances where he either called plays or had a significant input on what was being deployed out there. But I just don't. I wish it could be so easy.
Do you think that's more of Billy Napier wanting to like hang on to it, or is it to the point now where Billy has gotten where he knows his job isn't as secure as he'd like, and he really doesn't want to put it with somebody else because, you know, if he goes down, he'd rather be able to blame himself as opposed to, you know, man, I shouldn't have given, given play callings to this guy. At least if Billy Napier was to call plays this year and Florida looked terrible and fail, he couldn't blame anybody but himself. Do you think that's a lot of the mindset, or is it just an ego of, I'm a good play caller, I like to do this, I'm not giving it up?
I think it could be both. Even if it's not ego, maybe that was the wrong word, but I think that at the end of the day, he just does like calling plays, and I'm sure it's difficult for him to give that up. I'm guessing it's difficult for him to have hired the chief of staff, so to speak, because that does take him away from recruiting. That's another thing he loves to do. And I don't know. He's been willing to move on from guys and shift blame before with some of the firings, with Sean Spencer and Corey Raymond, that is, and deserved, maybe, probably even. But he's shown a willingness to not have the blame fall on his shoulders necessarily for his decisions. So I don't know. I guess it truly could go both ways.
My bad, Hirsch. I was going to ask my
thing
last
I said.
question.
Well, no, hold on. I want to say one more thing about Russ, and I said this when the news came out a couple of weeks ago. My first comment was, if he's calling plays, he's got to be doing it week 1, because you can't wait until that gauntlet in November and be like, well, Russ, it's all you, buddy.
I want
Save
to see
me.
him call plays
Save
against
me.
Samford. He has
Yeah.
to call plays against. He has to call plays against Samford.
Oh, of course
right?
he has
Like,
against Sanford. I mean, that's his
Yeah.
team. But you get what I'm saying. You can't be like,
Yeah.
oh man, this isn't working. Here, Wes, go face UGA,
Yeah.
Texas, LSU.
All right,
Miss.
Russ, coming out of the bye week, playing Georgia next week. It's on you now, buddy.
When we played South Carolina,
We're
and
I
I think that
3-3 now, and I know I'm losing my job, Russ. Go call those plays, buddy.
what Herschel was just talking about earlier, and CJ as well, and you as well, like the different ways we were using Trey in the backfield and stuff. I want to say, to me, that was Callaway thinking outside of the box. Let's line him up in the backfield. Let's do something exotic because he's that type of athlete. I don't know. We don't know, but to me,
And when he
that
wasn't
was my
used
thing.
for 2 quarters, that was
Yeah, that's why I say the first drive against Georgia when Trey had like all his catches, and then we was like, well, "Where's Trey? Why he's not?" He was the best player. It looked like he was the best player on the field against Georgia those first couple of drives. Then he like disappeared. I was like, well, "Where is he at?" But my last question to you, Zach. A lot of fans got on me in our YouTube about my ceiling. I think this team's ceiling maybe 8-4, 9-3. I feel like our floor, like you talked about earlier, if Napier hits on the guys that he has, maybe 6-6. But that's not a bad thing with the schedule. If you look at the schedule and the teams we were playing, we could be the best 6-6 team in the country because of the schedule that we were playing. So if those things were to happen, if we were to hit the ceiling, which is to me is 9-3, 8-4. If that's our ceiling, what are the good things? What are the things that you think will happen for us to hit that ceiling? And if we do 6-6, I guess you could talk about the teams that we're because of the schedule that I just alluded to. What are the things that you see that this is why we're 6-6 because Texas A&M they still have people on their players on their team. Tennessee, maybe Nico is that guy, even though I think we could get him. But that's a coin flip game, like you alluded to, and that one is on the road. But I think the home schedule, as you guys alluded to earlier, favors us because we're playing a lot of these teams at home, especially early on. What are the things that you think, as far as we can hit that ceiling? What has to go well for Florida for us to hit that ceiling? And if it's this bottoms out, which to me is my floor is 6-6, what are the things that you think could go wrong?
I think it comes down to 2 things. I think it comes down to Graham Mertz and the trenches. For hitting the ceiling, I think Graham Mertz, great as he was last year, still has room to improve. There's a lot of film out on this guy. A lot of teams, even though he was effective last year, will understand his weak spots, and great defenses like Georgia tend to figure out how to take advantage of those things. So if he can build upon his deep passing game from last year and maybe not replicate 20 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, because that's just an insane rate, or leading the conference in completion percentage. But if he can build upon it, unlock a deeper passing game, continue to make few mistakes, paired with obviously better offensive line play in terms of offering him protection. I think the quarterback sort of sacked a total of 39 times last year, and that just can't happen. Um, that'll help the run game in and of itself, even if the run blocking is still middle of the pack, but being able to build a respectable passing game that forces teams to drop back in coverage more and respect it will help the running game. And as a result, the offense should climb if Graham is able to take another step paired with that offensive line growth. Defensive line is the same thing. I think that will lead to a ripple effect for the rest of the defense. If they can create more consistent pressure, have more than just one player getting home, or at least making an impact back there, that will lead to more turnover opportunities, to more third and long situations that are tougher for teams to get out of. And ultimately that's what'll do it. That the game-changing plays, big plays from the offense and preventing them from the defense, is what will do it. And conversely, for them to stay around the same or potentially even get worse would be for Graham not to take another step forward. If Graham doesn't and teams start to pick up on him, I mean, we saw this last year. We know that Billy Napier wants to run a run-heavy offense, run-dominant offense, maybe is the better way to put it. And they didn't have that, so they leaned on their quarterback. If they can't lean on their quarterback this year, then what will a run-heavy offense accomplish for you at this point? We saw in 2022, as great as that rushing offense was, ultimately it didn't really move the needle that much. So the same logic applies for me in the trenches there. If the offensive line, I think you said it earlier, like the bar is so low, you gotta. There's not too much more room to go lower. They gotta go up. The offensive line needs to take a big step up, and if they don't do that, pressure continues to get home. They get around 39 to 40 sacks again. Um, I mean, that just spells trouble for Graham Mertz and his development. And on the defensive line, it's the same thing. We saw last year they had to rely on one person to create pressure, so he gets double teamed, and quarterbacks have their way. Rushing offenses have their way to record-breaking performances. So it really, as long-winded as that is, it really comes down to Graham being the quarterback that they believe him to be, and taking another step forward as we saw last year, unlike any other year of his career, and both the offensive and defensive line also taking big steps forward. I think the rest can fall into place based on significant improvement from those groups, and Graham maintaining his composure and taking it to another level.
CJ, you got anything else to ask?
No, I think that's pretty much covers all my questions. I think he's done a good job of answering about everything that I could ask. It's still early, we're still in March. I mean, we're only going to learn more as we go. I think he's right about the spring game. I think the spring game might tell us a good bit of where we're at. We saw the holes last year from the offensive line in the spring game. We're worried about the pedestrian offense a little bit. I think we're just so early on that we've got a lot to learn. Guys are getting back from spring break now, so I think we're going to learn a little bit more about this team as the spring goes on.
Yeah. So let's just ask the big question that we absolutely can ask, because it doesn't matter what we know. What does it take for him to keep his job?
Ooh. Paul, when I was on with Paul the other day, he was not thinking 7 wins would do it. I disagree.
I think 6 does it.
I think a winning record, bowl eligibility, 6 in the regular season, and a bowl game should not determine a job. But
no, I think if he goes 6-6 against the schedule specifically, and shows competitiveness in other games, like if obviously going to Texas, that's out the window. I mean, anything you do there, as long as you don't get nationally embarrassed, you're holding your own. You want to look competitive, more competitive than you did against UGA last year.
Exactly. It's how you lose.
Obviously, you want to win the game, but if you don't, you want to look like you put up a fight.
Exactly.
Right.
Ole Miss and LSU come to your house. You need to look like you can compete. I mean, obviously, we know Ole Miss is going to have a hell of a ball club this year. They paid for a great team. I mean, let's just be honest. They went out and bought the best team money could buy for being Ole Miss. So they're going to come to, but they're still coming here, and that gives you an advantage. So you should look competitive in those games. LSU, you don't know what you don't know what you're getting. Daniels isn't walking through the door. It's here. Their defense has been bad for the last 5 years. I mean,
they lost 2 first-round receivers
and 2 first-round receivers. You should be able to hold your own. Right. FSU, you don't know what you're getting in FSU. So as long as you look competitive and get 6 wins, I think he's safe. I think he's absolutely safe.
Right. Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel as though whether he finishes with a winning record, even if that's just 7-5, or is 500, but it was a coin toss, because if those other games are a coin toss, you're right. Like, consider who they're going against. I'm not expecting Samford to be a coin toss.
Yeah, don't lose to UCF. Don't lose to Samford. There's certain, like, when Mullen went out the door, he just looked embarrassing on the way, down the hill. Right. Don't look like that, and you're okay. That's just my take on it. And Napier's teams, to his credit, he's lost some games he shouldn't have lost. I don't think anybody argues that, but his team fights for him until the end in almost every game they play. And that's a testament.
I keep going back to Missouri. Florida State and Missouri and Arkansas were games that I felt like we should have won last year. And that's a different story we're coming into this year.
And but that's a testament to Billy. The Missouri game to me is a great testament to Billy because that's a game on paper you shouldn't have won. You shouldn't have even been in considering how they played against other teams.
And we lost our starting quarterback. Yeah.
And you lost your quarterback at the end, close to the end of the game there. So, and then if you have Graham versus FSU, and there's a lot of ifs there. Obviously, we know that.
Yeah.
But you have to have not as many ifs this year, and that should be part of third year in the system. Guys are buying in. We've had some of the same guys.
Yeah,
here,
I think if Billy does well and just, I think 500 against your rivals, beat a couple. Don't lose to Kentucky.
Don't have corny press conferences.
I think Kentucky. Don't lose to Kentucky is like my number one on top of the list. Like,
I'm
please,
with you, CJ.
for the love of God, don't lose to Kentucky again.
Yes.
Split Tennessee and Miami, beat one of them. I think that's a lot of it. Just don't get embarrassed as much. Games like Georgia. I don't expect to beat Georgia. Don't expect to beat Texas. I really don't expect to beat LSU. But don't go out there and look like you don't know what you're doing. I think that's a lot of it. I think we looked at the 2022 season like that with so much optimism coming into 23 because there were so many games we were close. I think that they're winning the games. It was like, okay, well, Billy barely lost to a lot of these teams. And then it just kind of fell flat on its face. All the air went out of the balloon this year. If we can kind of get back to what you were doing in 2022, I don't see any reason why he couldn't keep his job for another season, especially when you've got a guy like DJ Lagway in your hip pocket. That if you can look competitive, that guy's going to buy you some time.
Yeah.
Zach, we sure do appreciate you coming on with us this evening, man, and all the answers that you've given us, and I know our listeners will too, man. It's always a delight to have you on.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. It was a great time.
Always,
Thanks,
brother. Hopefully we can have you back in the fall and we can ask some of these questions with a little bit more, firm answers, obviously.
Yeah. No, I'll do my best to get you guys better answers next time.
We know it's limited right now, man.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I mean, what are you going to say? You see 16 minutes against air, and the coaches don't want y'all to see anything really, anyway. So,
but I love it. It still. Here I am.
It's awesome.
For our fans who don't follow you, though, let us know. Give them your plug, your social media, and all that stuff. So our fans who don't follow you should follow you because you write good stories and you're in tune with what's going on with the Gator Nation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You can find me on X at Zach _Goodall, ZACH. All my written work is over at allgators.com. SI Fan Nation's branch for Florida sports.
Man, you lost a good one in Connor. I know you're having to work a little extra time now, man. Oh, we love Connor. I'm glad he's moved on to something maybe that's going to bring him a little bit more, stability in his personal life, if that's what makes him happy. Best of wishes to him. Yeah. All right, guys, that's good. That's going to do it for this, man. We sure do appreciate Zach coming on. CJ, anything you want to add before we get out of here?
Oh, no, just thank you guys so much for supporting us as creators. Check out the Twitter, check out the Facebook, check out the YouTube, subscribe, comment, like, use our code decision with Florida Victorious. Use our link, check out our friends at Alma Mater, buy the gear. They're selling all kinds of things, new stuff coming out all the time. We're in the middle of baseball season. Basketball, we're about to hit March Madness coming up soon. So check those things out, the Jersey program, the benefit, the NIL, like I said. Of course, Florida Victorious, like I said, use our code decision. Check them out. They're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff as baseball season rolls around, football season, a lot of things that they put out there to make sure that you do get your bang for your buck and you support the Gator athletes and help, make us competitive. And, again, it is about the kids. It's about supporting them, making sure that we always show how much we're thankful as fans for the enjoyment that they do bring us. So thank you guys so much for following us, and just really keep it going. We appreciate all the love and support as we get deeper into the recruiting season. We're about to get heated up again. We're going to get into summer, and we're going to get into all the June and the Julys and the August. It's on the way.
It's definitely coming.
It's gonna
Yeah, I've
move
got
fast.
pollen up my
It's moving
nose.
fast.
I
Time
checked the
just
schedule
changed.
today.
Yeah.
June and July are
They're
coming.
on the way. Barring any setbacks, we are almost there. So thank you guys so much. Just like I said, keep with us. Check out all our social media handles. Any kind of breaking news stuff, we usually update it there. Join the chat on Facebook. Have some conversation in there. It's a little slow right now. Not much going on. What do you do? It's spring break. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, speaking of baseball, guys, the first 750 fans in the gate Friday versus Texas A&M will receive a Gator cup with the script Gators writing on it. So if you're in
It's a
town and
tumbler.
you want to go, if you want to go check out the Gators this Friday, support the team. As Nick Delatorre put out there, those cups will go fast. So
It will go very fast, and Nick cannot save you one. No, don't ask
no,
him.
Nick can't save you one, nor will he. Nor will he. All right, Wes, take us home, man.
Yeah, appreciate Zach for coming on. Gracious guest. Check him out later because hopefully he will be back here in the fall or maybe the summertime, whenever we ask him. Hopefully when
We'll
he
get
has
him in
time.
on the fall when there's practice real to talk about, and they got pads on.
I apologize. Something's in my contact and it's bothering my eyes, so I'm gonna wrap this up real quick.
Do it.
Thank you guys. Salute to you guys. Continue to follow us. Follow Zach. He gave his social media and everything, and his storage is great. So if you want to keep what day-to-day stuff and what's going on, follow him on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and read the stories because they are very, very, very good. So as always, go Gators.
Go Gators.
Go Gators.